Hello, welcome to the first ever review I'm doing for my new series called How Was It? Where we take different movies and we ask, how was it? Today we're looking at the film Hereditary. Hereditary is a 2018 film written and directed by Ari Aster, starring Toni Collette, Alex Wolff, Millie Shapiro, and Gabriel Byrne. It was one of my favourite movies of 2018 and probably one of the best horror films of all time in my opinion, and after rewatching it I am ready to tell you why. Just a warning that I'll be discussing some big spoilers in order to fully analyze the magnificence of Hereditary, so if you haven't seen it, just be warned. Spoiler alert. In his directorial debut, Ari Aster has made a unique, raw, stunning film that keeps you guessing until the very end. It's unlike any other movie. At its core, Hereditary is a movie about how death, PTSD, and mental illness affects a seemingly typical American family. This is in part why it's so terrifying. It's relatable, its characters and themes are real things that affect normal people in real life. The film begins with Toni Collette playing Annie, wife and mother of two, delivering a eulogy at her mother's funeral. It's clear by the way she talks about her mother that the two were estranged and had a very unstable relationship. Annie seeks help from others at a support group where she opens up about how severe mental illnesses run in her family and ultimately destroyed her mother's mind. This scene is really vital in understanding the premise behind Hereditary. As the film progresses, we quickly see that Annie's daughter Charlie is, to put it lightly, a little odd. It's not until the end of the first act where Hereditary throws a massive curveball and hits the audience with one of the most traumatizing scenes in cinema. At a party, Charlie's older brother Peter is smoking drugs. Charlie accidentally eats some nuts which she's anaphylactic towards, and she goes into a bad allergic reaction. Peter panics and he tries to drive her home as fast as he can. The audience is forced to watch Charlie's face swell up, watch her claw her own throat for air in the back seat. She sticks her head out the window, desperate to breathe, and Peter has an accident, and this results in Charlie being brutally decapitated on a telephone pole. The scene is beyond shocking. When it happens, the music stops, everything goes silent, the camera focuses on Peter's face rather than on his decapitated sister. Ari Aster does not revel in the brutality of what just happened. He focuses on the emotional destruction it caused in Peter, and I find this far more shocking. He can't even bear to look at her in the mirror or ask if she's okay. He just utters nonsense. He can't even put a word together. He's clearly broken. The scene is indescribable. It's nauseating. It's trauma-inducing to watch, in fact. It separates this movie from others due to the suddenness and the shock value of it. And Alex Wolff delivers such an electric performance, it makes you hold your breath, clench your jaw, and on second viewing, my stomach was still in knots watching it. Peter's seemingly in a trance of shock. He drives home and goes to bed, leaving his sister in the back seat. Annie discovers her daughter's body the next morning. Again, we only hear her screams as the camera gives us a close-up shot of Peter's face in bed. Hearing Annie's agonizing screams of sheer grief is really bone-chilling, and Toni Collette needs an Oscar for her performance. I have never believed grief like I have in Hereditary in a movie. She's amazing. It's scary watching Annie question her decisions and her very own sanity throughout the movie from here on out. In particular, in one scene, she's explaining to her friend Joan about this horrific incident that occurred in the past where she nearly kills her children. She's trying so hard to assert her innocence to both Joan and I think to herself, and you can see how unsure she is. She's questioning her morality and her well-being. As the film progresses, Annie and Peter begin to lose their sanity due to the survivor's guilt, the grief, the PTSD of what's happened, and supernatural occurrences begin occurring in the house. Where this film's really clever, though, is that it never explicitly states that these are ghosts that we're seeing and hearing. I believe what we're seeing is the mental breakdown of these two characters as they struggle with their grief. This ambiguity signals that all these horrors experienced are real, be it in real life or in their heads. Charlie's death is the trigger for this emotional collapse and elicits a profound psychological response in two people who are already suffering with a family history of mental illness. Hereditary uses some brilliant foreshadowing throughout its script, through the use of symbols, iconography, cinematography, and set props. Annie is an artist who makes miniatures, often depicting her life and the people around her, and it's a really unique way of shedding some insight into her psyche, as well as create tension and inducing paranoia, as many of the miniatures she makes are disturbing and become more disturbing as the film progresses. The sets themselves often feel like you're looking into a dollhouse, and I think this is a metaphor for how we're literally looking into the breakdown of this everyday family. Overall, the film feels really poetic in how it's set and how it's shown, with a structure and story that's really unexpected and original. The horrors explored in Hereditary are real, and that allows the audience to empathize strongly, and thus makes the experience all the more harrowing. We see the breakdown of this family, the destruction of mind and soul, and the exploration of survivor's guilt and PTSD. That scares me more than any monster or ghost ever could, because these things are real and could happen to me or the people I love. When things ramp up in the third act, Ari Aster employs some astounding techniques to make the horror all the more unique and scary, from uncomfortably long, unbroken shots, a lack of score at many vital moments in the film, and tricks of the eye in the foreground and background. The score, when it is used, it's used quite sparingly, is stringy and booming at the same time. The use of violins is one of my favourite sounds in horror, and it's used so well here to elicit discomfort and paranoia. It's reminiscent of the scores in Insidious and The Conjuring. Jump scares are rarely used in Hereditary, relying on more unique forms of inducing fear that hits way harder than most other horrors, in my opinion. Such as ticking clocks, the slow increase in volume of the thundering orchestra, followed by long bouts of silence. These all build anxiety and induce that paranoia. It's an uncomfortable movie to watch at best. One scene in particular near the end focuses on Peter, as his quote-unquote mother basically stalks him throughout the house, and it's so perfectly framed, well focused, and it uses low-angle shots so brilliantly. The sets in this scene are so well lit, and the scene is so drawn out that you can't come out of it feeling like really anxious. It's one of my favorite cinema scenes ever. It's just so well made. It induces so much tension over the course of 5 minutes, and there's no shitty jump scares to ruin this perfect build-up. I just think it's flawless, and I just needed to state that. The ending is my only critique of Hereditary. I feel like they tried a bit too hard to cater to the less intelligent audiences. They tried to answer too many questions that didn't need answering as to what's actually going on in this movie. Unfortunately, a lot of horror viewers nowadays, they kind of come for a quick, cheap jump scare and, lack any insight to understand the gravity of thinking movies such as Hereditary. I wish they'd left the ending a bit more ambiguous, but I guess I can interpret the ending as Annie's trying to make excuses for her actions and trying to make sense of the things in her head, since mental illness is a huge theme in this movie and it's clear she loses her grip on reality. All of the supernatural and cult elements in the third act can be attributed to Annie and Peter's explanation of their insanity. The fact that Peter shares in these perceptions illustrates to the hereditary nature of their mental illnesses. The very last scene of the symbolic passing of the crown to Peter, I think, is a symbol of Annie's hereditary mental illnesses. The curse, in one way or another, is real, this curse of mental illness. Like the Babadook, The Witch, and Annihilation, Hereditary doesn't shy away from dealing with mature themes and metaphors. It executes a unique and brave take on the horrors of everyday mental health in a very tasteful yet terrifying manner. Seeing Annie and Peter's struggles with guilt and their descent into madness is harrowing, uncomfortable, and skin-crawling. Hereditary is horror done right, being mostly brave enough to trust in its messages, taking bold risks, and this leads to a confident, near-flawless cinematic execution. Hereditary gets 4.5 Screaming Tony Collettes out of 5.